Ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted to present Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia. He's just done that book which you can see, India Africa Relations. He has been India's ambassador to Kenya, South Africa, and Lesotho in Africa. He was India's ambassador to Myanmar and Mexico. He has been in the foreign service for nearly 4 decades. He has already published 2 books. This is his third book. And on the extreme left is Mr. Dammu Ravi, Secretary in charge of Economic Relations in the Ministry of External Affairs. And he has held very important positions in the government. He's been with the government for more than 3 decades. He worked in several countries as an ambassador with other departments, and now he looks after Africa and Secretary Economic Relations. A warm welcome to you, gentlemen. Africa is a very important country, continent actually. So there are 4 countries, but still barely 1 billion people or something. But we are just one country, India. We are one country, 4 billion people. And people used to say that when I'm in school, that Africa is a dark continent. But in my humble opinion, is a continent with great future. There was a time when most of the countries were being run by dictators, but now you have more democracies than dictatorships in Africa. India's relations with Africa have been on the upswing. We have our embassies now in 40 odd countries, in 47 countries. And invested more than $70 billion, and all those billions will be provided by Secretary Ravi and also Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia. Without wasting any more time, may I request Ambassador Bhatia to tell us something about the book and how we can write about it, and how does it look at the future of relations between the great African continent and India. Thank you, Ambassador Bhatia.
Thank you very much, Venkat. Thank you, Foreign Correspondents Club of India, South Asia actually, and thank you very much, Secretary Dammu Ravi. Thank you to all of you, correspondents and associate members of the club who are here in full strength. It's a great honor for me to be here addressing you. I knew about this institution. And I'm really very happy that I'm here on this occasion to talk about the book on Africa. That shows that you are interested in the subject, and probably you would like to know a bit more on it. So it's very much designed as a book discussion, and therefore I will only take about maximum 10 minutes to talk about this work, because in effect the whole purpose should be to reveal enough to you to attract you to reading the book. But I know that in addition to you, each of you has a whole lot of people behind you for whom you write or you send reports through the electronic means, and therefore I'm really grateful for this opportunity. Dear friends, my connection with Africa goes back to 1998, when the government sent me out as India's High Commissioner to Kenya. And then I went there again in 2006 as High Commissioner to South Africa. So 7 years helped me to understand this very vast and complex continent and its people, its achievements and its challenges. But the story did not end there. After my superannuation from the Indian diplomatic service, I had the occasion to head the important think tank known as the Indian Council of World Affairs. And there at the ICWA, one was able to play an active role in bringing the scholars of India and African countries together. And now working at Gateway House, which is a niche think tank based in Mumbai. Once again, I have a chance to keep connect with Africa alive. So this is my credentials for writing this book. But more importantly, it is the passion for a continent which should be better known and understood in India. Why? As Venkat said very rightly, this continent is changing very fast. And it's important that our perceptions about it should also change and become updated. We all know that in the previous century, gradually in phases, liberation of African states came, most of which were under colonial rule of Europe. And then they struggled with the challenges ranging from poverty to poor health, poor governance. But in the last 20 years, the news from Africa is relatively good or even better. It is about the achievements of the African Union, the one which replaced the previous organization, OAU. And it is also about more democracy, faster economic development, social changes, Africa's success in getting adjusted to technology, and above all, Africa playing a bigger role in world affairs. So I want to say that this book is mainly about India-Africa relationship, but it has been set in a wider context. So there is a long chapter on Africa's relations with the world. And this is not just with Europe or the US, it is also about Latin America. It is with Brazil, it is with Middle East countries like Turkey and UAE. It is also about Southeast and Far East. So it is about Africa's relations with Indonesia, Australia. And it is in that background we have tried to look at the relationship with India. Now, some of you must be wondering as to why the author is not talking about the most talked about country and its relations with Africa, and that is China. I have devoted a separate chapter on Africa-China tango. I think this is a very stimulating and provocative chapter. And here in India, as is it indeed in the West, in Asia, the China figures prominently, and I've tried to present the China-Africa tango story as objectively as I could. But beyond that, I also want to highlight one more point, which is about people such as you, the constituency that you represent. There is a chapter on socio-cultural aspects of India-Africa relations. And here, the role of the diaspora, both the Indian diaspora in Africa and African diaspora in India has been analyzed. More importantly, we have talked about the role of media, university, think tanks, and the intellectual class. I think this is something that I need to underline, that India-Africa story cannot be understood only with reference to what the governments do with each other. 54 there, 1 year. It's important that people such as you and us, you and me, also make our contribution by understanding the transitions in Africa, their role in the world affair, and more importantly, the future. We all know that by the time 2050 comes, Africa will be the largest population continent in the world. And between Africa and India, we probably would be representing nearly 40% of the world population. So it's important for us to know what really Africa is trying to do and how we can help Africa, not because we want to be over generous, but because it is in our interest to do so. And I'm referring not just to India, I'm referring to many important countries in the world that you represent and you cater. My last point relates to a central conviction with me. When a civil servant or a diplomat transitions into a modest scholar, he may not be totally accepted by the scholarly community, but he does bring a unique, he or she brings a unique feature, which is that I've served 36 years in the government of India, entirely in the Ministry of External Affairs. So I have extensive practical experience of diplomacy and foreign policy. And that is the reason why when I ended the book, I felt that policy analysis must result in a set of advisories or recommendations or policy suggestions to the government. And not just to the government, but to the community at large, to the society as well. So, without going into detail, I can highlight the fact that here is a book which traces history, examines strategy, refers to economy, brings in the social and cultural dimensions, and eventually ends up making a whole set of what I regard as practicable recommendations for consideration by all those who care for closer India-Africa relations. I very much hope that the larger constituencies represented here will have an opportunity to have a look at the book. I have written this book not for money, I want to assure you. But I have done this because I regard this as service to the nation. I must share whatever knowledge and experience I acquired. And in order to print this 200-page book, 90,000 words, is not a very big, thick volume of 600 pages. It is readable, provided there is some interest in the subject. With this, once again, let me thank the host institution and Venkat, my friend, of long standing, and I'm really grateful to him for having given me this opportunity. And I'm particularly grateful to the secretary who has had a very busy day today and was found time to come. I really feel very happy with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pandya. And I now request Secretary Ravi to tell us about the latest India-Africa relations, how does he look at the future, when is the India-Africa Forum Summit is likely to be held. These are my golden line of information, so I will share some of the data. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Vivatia, senior colleague. It's indeed an honor and pleasure to be here today in this prestigious Foreign Ministers Club. And this month, in particular, this week marks a very unique timing in terms of the way India and Africa relationship influences. Yesterday we had Africa Declaration, and before that there was a launch of the different perspectives on the dimension of India Africa relations, economic factor, and earlier to that the Foreign Minister, Resources Minister, launching the book of Ambassador India Africa. So I think, and then next week, and this weekend is the Vice President going to Africa, West Africa, Gabon, and Senegal. So I think this week and this month is special for India Africa relationship in many ways. I don't like to go too much details when the author is sitting here, because I can only touch on a broader perspective, right, areas of what he attempted. First of all, I would like to congratulate and compliment you, sir, for an extraordinary work that has gone into it. I mean, this is in a way very rare book, because in a very long time, we haven't had this kind of deep insights into Africa relationship. And that's why I say this that a real treasure for not only people in the policy making in government, but also academicians and people who are truly interested in the India-Africa relationship. It's a real eye-opener and very insightful. Of course, there are many chapters yes, the Master Bhatia has covered. I think for me, I will touch upon areas where I really like it. First thing is the evolution of the relationship, and the way he put it into context. At a time when the world is focusing on the Indo-Pacific relationship, the gravity having been shifted to this part of the world, ASEAN being central to that, Ambassador Bhatia has really brought in focus Africa, African continent in the 21st century, and its importance and relevance for all of us. I think that's really important way I see it. Then he traces the relationship in a very broad sense of post-independence India, the post-Second World War, time till now, how the relationship between India and Africa has evolved. And what is it that is so important in that is the continuity. And across leadership, there has been an abiding interest and support for Africa from the Indian side. Tracing back to the Nehru days, Indira Gandhi subsequently, and in the present time, Prime Minister Modi giving a greater emphasis and push to our relationship with extensive exchanges of visits at a very high level, driving the development partnership initiative to a higher level. So these are all the characteristics of the relationship. But of course, a great deal has been emphasis actually in how Gandhian ideals and principles impacted our thinking, the freedom struggle, and the anti-apartheid, the satyagraha. All these ideas are so unique, and not only unique but so dear to both sides, Africa and India. So then comes the 21st century. The 21st century, how countries have started to look at Africa. It's just not India that has reprioritized its relationship, its importance with Africa, but I think many countries are in the game. I think that's what has been very well brought up. Of course, Ambassador Bhatia gives a lot of focus on how China has dealt with Africa. $1 trillion investment in a cumulative sense and $200 billion annual trade compares very significantly higher than that of India, with $70 billion of bilateral trade annually and $65 billion cumulative investments. So there is a comparison. But Ambassador Bhatia also brings out a very significant element. The comparison is quite unfavorable, and because their approaches are very different, and then we have to take note of that. Each country has its own approach. We are rooted in the understanding and idea that there should be a South-South cooperation philosophy that we will do drive our development partnership. Which is the recipient country will determine what it wants, and it's a demand, and we will not impose our ideas, our interests in any African country, and that has been the philosophy that has been driving our relationship on development partnership. So the growth, the robustness, and the vibrancy of relationship is contextualized in the way leadership on both sides have risen this relationship to high levels. In the India-Africa Forum Summit, 3 forum summits have been taken place so far. The last one was in 2015, and where a clear set of criteria, a set of objectives have been brought out, and in terms of our engagement in Africa. And we've been going very diligently in implementing those ideas and objectives. And then, of course, we have to look at a convenient time for both sides to do the 4th India-Africa Summit, Forum Summit. We will be coming out with that soon. And then comes how the development partnership, a significant study has been done and research that has been captured in the book. So the lines of credit, the grants, then the capacity building framework under the ITEC that has been there since 1964, that's how much it has shaped or helped Africa in its capacity building initiatives, and how we have improved. With the technology, we actually went into satellite technology, the digital technologies have expanded the scope of the capacity building. The Pan-Africa e-network program, which is using satellite-based technology for expanding educational capacities. Then came e-Vidya Bharati and e-Arogya Bharati. These are again the digital technologies that have expanded this. And Ambassador Bharati also touches about the importance of institutional creation. So vocational training centers, the IT centers of excellence, all of these explained in the chapter. So we are now looking at Africa, which has actually redefined itself in the 21st century. So I think a great deal has been brought out in the book there, especially in terms of the determination of the African countries to resolve their own problems, their own issues. And as a group, they are able to have a better presence and force in the multilateral institutions and negotiations. So he takes us to the importance of Agenda 2063 in terms of the aspirational Africa wanting to industrialize itself and wanting to keep away the neo-colonialist forces that takes away the resources without adding value. That's been very well captured. Then comes the Africa continent-wide free trade agreement. So what it means when they collapse their own barriers within the African continent and begin to do the trading among themselves seamlessly. So there's a huge potential awaiting to happen. The ambassador also dealt with bilateral relations in a significant way. We, each country, he's dealt with quite lucidly. He brought out the main elements of the relationship. Then he also emphasizes on the importance of sub-regions within this continent. So not only that it should be bilaterally we should develop, but also we have to strategize this continent in a sub-regional context. So you got to engage it sub-regionally, but this is not limiting bilateral relations. It will only be strengthening the region, because we have to recognize the fact that within this continental Africa, there is so much diversity. There are large economies, the small economies, there are francophone countries, English-speaking countries, the Portuguese countries. So there is the diversity which we have to recognize. I think another interesting chapter I found was the people-to-people contact, and he dealt with it at a great length there. But he also feels sorry for the fact that this has not been effectively promoted by both sides. So we have a 3 million diaspora there, and we are grateful, deeply appreciative for African governments and given our Indian origin people their home there and enabling them to flourish in that continent and contributing to the economy. So then the African students in India and Ambassador Bhatia has some ideas as to how we have to deal with the sensitive part of handling the African students, whether we can give them a chance to work after they have completed their education in India and make them more skillful and be able to be useful when they go back to those countries. So that is the main essence of the book, but I think I have to say one more thing about post-COVID and how we should be looking at Africa into the future. The post-COVID India-Africa relationship. There are a lot of ideas there. I think the priorities are changing very rapidly in the post-COVID. The health sector is becoming a very important priority for all the countries. So how India can become a partner. So can we have a stronger, deeper partnership with the healthcare sector, setting up institutions of medical colleges, nursing institutes, and being able to do telemedicine concept, the digital technology, facilitating that and enhancing the scope. Then comes in the Make in India. And I feel this is a very, very interesting idea that Ambassador brought in. The Atmanirbhar Bharat cannot be in isolation. it would be, its importance and relevance would be enhanced if it had a linkage with a potential African continent. And if we are able to do a partnership with African countries, then Atmanirbhar Bharat actually will have greater relevance to India and to our partner countries. And how do it? It is like, can you do manufacturing platforms in the African continent? Can you look at a situation where you're able to do a finished product in an African continent and sell it locally so that it creates a win-win situation? And you're able to create locally value in terms of crop creation, in terms of energizing the economic activity there, the revenue generation model. The resources utilizing in a win-win situation. Can we look at a model that while we are doing projects, can we use these resources for both sides advantage? That Africa is so rich in terms of the energy security point of view, the food security point of view. Africa could be a solution for the 21st century, for not only India and Africa, but for the entire world. But we need to find an answer solution. We have to have creative minds. How do we approach that ideas that Ambassador Bhatia has presented in his book? Of course, there's a lot of thoughts that people-to-people contact could actually get enhanced with tourism. Subhash Goyal, who is here with us, he said open sky policy. Of course, they're very, very important. But we should also talk to our airlines and see if they can have direct linkages. Because again, Africa and India are so rich in the tourism gifts that they have, natural gifts and cultural assets that we both have. So these are the ideas, and I think what media can do. In my view, there is so limited understanding of Africa in India. And I think the same holds true for Africans, both India. Beyond the freedom struggle and values, I don't think there's much is known about the rising India. So there is a need for the media, and I think it's important that collectively we have to work towards expanding our own understanding of Africa and the comprehension of the true Africa and India. That would where you all will come in, complement the relationship. Then last idea that's very interesting for me is the trilateral cooperation. Ambassador Bhatia captures it in a very significant way that in this age, no one country can find solutions. No one country can do large projects. The time has come for us to look at doing it jointly. Perhaps now we will not partner with another friendly country to do a massive project and continue to do many projects. Of course, Ambassador Bhatia goes further. Say, why not even be China to do together? So those are the ideas out from the book. Sir, I don't know, I've done justice to it, but I think this is what interested me. There's a lot more in the book, but I'd like to leave a thought. It's a book which we will treasure enormously in industry. And I'd like my ambassadors in the entire African continent have own one. Diplomats of India own each one of them. And in our own ministry, my own division, the Africa division, who are working in Africa, they're enhancing the partnership, building the partnership, to be able to use this as a reference point and keep referring to it on and off, and learn lessons. And for policymakers, it's truly a treasure. Congratulations.
Thanks very much. By the way, the book is available. The counter is there, and they're giving a 20% discount. Comes for 1,800 rupees. Author will be very happy to autograph copies of the show for here. And now it's a question and answer time. Anybody wishes to ask any questions, kindly raise your hand. Microphone will come to you, and please, and then.
Good evening, I'm Rebecca Mukherjee from Swaraj. Congratulations, Mr. Bhatia, for your book, wonderful book, and for your life and responsibility, which really deserves a lot of attention. I have two questions for Mr. Bhatia and Mr. Ravi. We haven't seen lately, I mean, when Prime Minister Modi had the big engagements with various different states in Africa, since then, I mean, they haven't seen much of the Prime Minister's high-level exchange visits to the to the government. Is anything expected to happen in this particular year? And also you mentioned the Indo-Pacific, where I think developing infrastructure and connectivity is an important pillar of India-Japanese relations as well. So could you please elaborate on that and what's happening on that front?
Thank you very much. Very important pieces that have been developed in this book, and I've adopted a very apolitical approach. This is an academic book. This is not a book to project any particular government or political party. I've let the facts speak for themselves. And based on that, I have argued that the upswing in India-Africa relations was started in 2008, after a preparatory phase which began in 2001. And from 2008 onwards, it has been going up. And particularly in the period 2014 to 2019, facts established that India-Africa partnership saw new milestones. For example, if you go by the number of VIP visitors from Africa to India, or even more importantly, if you go by the number of VVIP visitors from India to Africa. By VVIP, as you all know, I'm referring to President, Vice President, and Prime Minister. It has been a phenomenal record. No government in this country from 1947 sent as many VVIPs to Africa in a short period of 4 or 5 years than the Narendra Modi government. This is what the facts are. Now, you said why Prime Minister Modi has not yet planned or thought of going back to Africa again. First of all, I think, as Secretary pointed out, beginning to happen. Vice President of India is going to West Africa. But I think we should again go back to facts. The last 3 years have been traumatic for the world and for India. COVID happened, Galwan happened, Ukraine happened, economic downturn happened. So there has been certain, kind of disruption. And my whole purpose of writing this book was to say that hopefully we are now once again at a place where we can recapture the momentum that we had seen until 2019. So that is fundamentally the answer to the first question. On the second, Indo-Pacific and India-Japan, equations, both Japan and India are very active in Africa. There also have been attempts between India and Japan to collaborate in Africa. Some of them have not succeeded yet, but that does not mean that it is an unworkable idea. It is a workable idea. Now we have new leadership in Japan. And once again, you have noted in the latest Quad Summit document, there is a mention of a very big sum, $50 billion to be spent in the next 5 years on the Indo-Pacific region. And as you know, Indo-Pacific includes Eastern and Southern Africa. So I'm sure, leaders and scholars and others in Africa will, work with India to make these intentions into a reality.
You want to add something?
As podcast captured almost everything that you want to know. But there's one thing in terms of the way we see bilateral cooperation. Japan is a very important part of the days to come. And for quite some time, both sides have been talking about the possibility of doing projects together. There is some reluctance for reasons saying that we are not very clear how this can actually happen. Because the skills are different, the technologies are different. But I think worldwide, many countries are now pushing the best way to go about and be able to do projects continuously is to try that way. And I think in the Quad context, the Indo-Pacific context, now the new fund is coming up there. So, and as Bhatia said, that Indo-Pacific actually touches even Africa. So we should look at the connectivity, importance of connectivity and how we can strengthen that.
So in one of the industry interviews I was doing, I was told by an industry leader that the main reason for the shortage of shipping containers that pushed the price of transport around the world was that during COVID they were sent to Africa with aid material. And once they were there was not enough material or goods to be transported out of Africa, and these shipping companies were not ready to bring them empty. Is this could it be so bad that the whole international transfer prices shipping prices will go up because there's nothing much to be shipped out of Africa? Do you see this is real or?
I would pretend to know the latest of this, but it would certainly come as a surprise to me because Africa does have a lot of commodities and a lot of minerals and other things to export, and the facts and figures speak for themselves. So fundamentally, even India-Africa trade, where safety refers to over $70 billion, is fairly balanced. It's not totally balanced, but fairly balanced. We buy a lot of stuff from Africa and we sell a lot of things to Africa as well. What happens is that the prices of the commodity, when they go down, then it becomes a problem. But the way shipping service works and the container service works, I'm really not authority.
Yeah, so some perspective on it will not be entire. I explain about the common principle. But the way it really happens, first of all, we have to recognize that in the last 2 years, there was a huge disruption of supply chains around the world. So, COVID, for one reason, there was no trade at all happening. So, most of the containers were stuck. The second is now you have the more recent crisis. But just in a very broad context, the containers won't go unless it has goods both sides. So, if a container is stuck and you have to take it to another port, a destination, got to have containers full. But yes, there is a shortage of containers, and so most of the shipping lines are doubling up the prices. It's become very expensive, but nothing to do with Africa. It's because of the disruption that has happened around the world. So, yeah.
Sebastian?
Yes, thank you very much, Sebastian Parker. I work for the French International Radio. And therefore, I'm more interested in your perspective on how, of course, India has been very popular with the diaspora in South and East Africa, region of history and language. And what is your perspective into reaching out more in the French, Francophone countries? What are the avenues that you see for India to enter countries which are fully developed like Senegal or the West French-speaking Africa, countering maybe with French influence? What are the powerhouses and avenues that India can use, and what is the state of today that you see in that aspect?
That's a good question, and I think the answer is that the prospects are now much better than they were in the past. I think the first favorable factor is the growing proximity in the relation between India and France. There is a strategic understanding between the two countries that in all possible sections of the world where we can work together, we must work together. So this is getting reflected in Africa as well. The second favorable factor is that India has realized that just banking on a few countries in East and South is just not going to be enough. It's a large, diverse continent. And that is the reason why the Indian government has started setting up new embassies including in the Francophonie world. Now, the third point we also have to remember is that France has mastered the art of adapting its role in Africa to the changing situations in Africa. France was a traditional colonial power, but when the time came, they were among the first to hand over political independence. On the understanding that the economic linkages will continue, and on top of that, that would be reinforced by the cultural and linguistic connect that bound with the Francophone countries of Africa with France. So this is quite a magical formula which no other former colonial power could actually master other than France. So keeping all this in mind and speaking from my own perspective of having served in France, I can say that there are opportunities in the services sector, the digital economy that the secretary pointed out earlier, and also in the cultural sector. I think with specific countries such as Senegal, the cultural cooperation scene is very active. But having said all this, I have to stress that this approach either of continental policy or only of bilateral approach would not be enough. We need to have perhaps not one but 5 Africa policies. And if we have that, then the Francophonie Africa would deserve a specially designed and specially adapted India's Africa policy, and I think we have some work to do in that regard.
Ravi, you want to start that?
Just to supplement to what Ambassador Patel said. See, our own engagement with Africa has enhanced so much in the recent times. And even we are looking at the Francophone countries, I don't think we make any distinction there or differentiation. But we feel there is a need to be more intimately connected. Now, for example, Senegal is where we are. Look at the Indian automobiles, the Tatas are there. It's such a brand ambassador for us. And we have done the irrigation projects in the likes of it. And the Indian pharmaceuticals are so widely present in all the lands. And now we have a vocational training center. So there is certain solutions. We believe that India, as a developing country, we have a lot more close hand, and there's a lot more to share. Look at how we look at it. In terms of resources, hydrocarbons in the West African part of view is so hugely important. Gas and Senegal has huge hydrocarbons, which are still untapped, and there we need to go and invest and secure our energy in those areas. I think a lot more in the days to come will be exploring. Much more we can do. ECOWAS Bank is another thing we have actually put in money to do projects. So things like that. We are there, but we need to expand our footprint.
Namaste. This is Ravi Isran from Nikam Media Publishing. I have a question. Compared to China, how is India's impression in Africa?
Compared to China,
Yes, compared to China, how is India's impression in Africa?
this was covered earlier. If we are looking at the just quantum of figures, which have already been mentioned of trade, investment, projects, the loans extended. Obviously, Chinese are far ahead. I have no difficulty in noting and recognizing it, and I have reflected in the book. Facts again have to speak for themselves. But where I disagree with the Chinese projection is that, they have been a kind of an ancient partner of Africa. This is all manufactured mythology. It's all manufactured history. If there is a country that has been connected with Africa for centuries before Chinese ever thought of reaching there, it is India. Indians went there through various routes, and they all went to make friends, to do the cultural relations and the commercial relations. No Indian went there to conquer territory or establish a colony. This is a big difference. So today, India has its own unique strengths, and India is playing today. And I think in India in particular, the attempt should be not to keep comparing India-China, but to understand what are the lessons for India from the Chinese experience in Africa. It's difficult for an Indian, and especially a former Indian diplomat, to be very objective on China these days. I mean, the wounds inflicted are still very fresh. But the fact is that our task should be to learn from how Chinese have done things wrong and how we must try to get it right. We have a strength, and all that we require to do, and I have to be frank in saying this, we have to gradually recapture the momentum of a very proactive stance on Africa as we have in recent years. And I'm confident that this will happen in the next 1 or 2 years. Already, I'm sure you are receiving hits from all quarters. So let us not let us not spend all our energy comparing India to China. Let us look at the brighter prospects that India has for its relationship with Africa.
And what about Chinese debt trade in Africa?
Well, it's a standard, like, in an Indian meal there has to be a dal. So this question has to be there. My point is, forget about the media in different countries talking about it. Let us hear the African voices. One good way to get the full picture is to hear what African scholars, African governments, African experts are saying. They themselves, many of them are, expressing their grievances that these big debts are given which we cannot afford to repay, and if we cannot repay, then our national assets have the danger of being taken over. And then these big monies are given with conditions, although it is claimed that it is not with conditions. At the same time, my research shows that Africa still wants money from wherever it is coming. They want it from China, they want it from US, they want it from India. So, frankly, at the end of the day, it is their decision. We only can offer a better alternative, which I think India is trying.
Ravi, you want to add?
Just to, well, I don't want to be critical about what China is doing, but I think what China is doing is already well known. It's evident very large projects. But the consequences of it also one needs to understand that, when you do large projects, naturally there's a repayment issue, there's challenges to repay, and the debt trap, and how you handle that. So I'm not going more into it. But it's very clear that there's certain things China cannot do, or any other country cannot do. There's certain things only India can do. Perhaps, and that's where is our value, which is the education sector, space where we are very strong, and we have already done a large capacity building in the education arena, medical aid and pharmaceuticals, agriculture expertise that we have created in that. Now we are entering into the digital space, and there is so much, these are enablers and a multiplier effect we could see. And what more, the Indian diaspora is such a strong presence there. So, there's, in a way, India is uniquely positioned. So that is our strength. Other countries may have different approaches. So there is we shouldn't be critical about what this thing, but everybody is creating value to Africa. I think that's important for us.
Just one quick correction I want to make with respect to the Secretary. In the book, I have not said that there is a possibility of India and China collaborating in Africa. It is a Chinese scholar whom I am citing. I am realistic enough to realize that given the reality of India-China relationships, that kind of view is untenable. So it is not my view, it is the view I cited, And I frankly do not feel that there is any great possibility where the foreseeable future.
You know, you have to speak up, please. Please use the microphone.
First of all, heartiest congratulations to you, sir. My question is to you, Rajiv. What is your expectations with this, as an author, what is your expectations with this book, comparing your last previous book, India-Myanmar relation? From operating and selling point of view.
Oh, thank you very much. First of all, I'm grateful to you that you are aware that this is the second book. As I said right in the beginning, very honestly, some of us write the book in order to share our knowledge and experience. In fact, when you write a book, your knowledge increases. That is the real benefit to us. But naturally, without the backup of such a prestigious international publisher as Routledge, we cannot produce a work that will go to the four corners of the world. This is where I feel myself to be very fortunate that even before the South Asian edition came, the book was already available in America, UK, Europe. This was the same case with Myanmar. So, comparing the timing and approach, I was very lucky that the Myanmar book came right at the time when that country was undergoing a major transition towards democracy. And now, this has come in order to put Africa back on the map of the Indian mind. And I hope the presence of the Secretary here today, plus the launch of the book personally by the Foreign Minister of India, which is a very rare thing as you know, indicates that the official mind in this country is fully focused on India-Africa partnership. And I'm very happy that this book is perhaps making a small contribution to that process. Thank you.
I have a question. First time I went to Africa was in 1982 to meet with Mugabe soon after Zimbabwe became independent. So there were no flights. I had a flight from Delhi to Bombay, Bombay to Nairobi, Nairobi to Lusaka, then to Harare. Even today, going to South Africa is a problem. Go via something. And there was a UN conference in Johannesburg, and people from different African countries were gathering in Dubai to catch connecting flight to go to Joburg. And we have 3 million Indians, and every third Indian living abroad lives in Africa. There is tremendous goodwill. So far, I have visited 10 countries in Africa, and everywhere there is so much love and affection for India, the way we do business with them. Thousands of our teachers go and teach English there, and several thousand Africans have come and studied in our universities. At any given point of time, at least half a dozen countries in Africa are headed by those Africans who learned English or who came to India to study functional science. But in spite of all this, the fact remains that Africa does not have a single correspondent based in India reporting back. And India does not have a correspondent posted anywhere in Africa reporting on Africa for India. So the bottom line is you depend on AP, AFP, Reuters, CNN, BBC. What are the chances of things undergoing a change in the near future? And when the fourth India-Africa Forum Summit is held early next year, will Ambassador Bhatia's suggestion that African Union should be encouraged to open an office here, the European Union has an office here. And the manner in which some of the African students get treated in our, Pune, Delhi, Bangalore, whatever. And we consider opening a separate section dealing with African students, who are studying in India. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think we would limit our engagement and the kind of the apparatus within the ministry will actually expand. At one point of time, there was one joint secretary in the entire Africa, but today we have two joint secretaries, and we had additional secretary dealing with Africa, now a secretary dealing with Africa. So there's so much has changed in the way we have been engaging with Africa, and also we have missions open. So many missions have been opened, 18 new missions have been opened, and we are doing greater engagement. So in terms of dealing with students, yes, that's a very important subject that Ambassador Bhatia had dealt with in the book. We need to engage in using the skills in a better way, both for our industry and also for the Indian industry when they go back to set up companies there, we should be using that. So there are some ideas which we may analyze it. But definitely, there's a lot more we should, and we should constantly reinvent ourselves and how we engage with Africa in an innovative way.
Rajiv, you want to say something about that?
Only thank you.
My name is Adel Duba from the Algerian embassy. I've got a question, kind of a journalistic question, but I'm not it's out of law and academic interest. Speaking China and other type of aid to Africa and Indian aid, I think there is one central difference, is that the two political systems are different. And in the development partnership, there is this part which is aid. So how India and China deal with the internal pressure which push against aid, because both countries have their own needs. How this can impact the sustainability of the aid part of the Indian cooperation to Africa. And then there is another question. Sorry. That's it. There is another interrogation, but that's fine for now.
I think
Yes, I'm sorry. This, in my mind, because I'm also interested in the development cooperation in general in Africa, I think the concept of Africa here poses a problem. Of course, we have a continental organization, we have institutions, but Africa in itself, when defined in a single word, it's kind of project. Our friend here is speaking how India will deal with the French speaking. But you have to show in Africa landlocked countries. You have closer countries to India with the sea in the eastern coast. You have other parts in the south. Every part of Africa is different. And since we have not integration in terms of infrastructure, difficult to speak of Africa like we speak of Europe or maybe Southeast Asia. So this notion of Africa is complex, and I think in the active policy conception level, there are priorities for each region, each specific group of countries. So if you just can develop, if you have kind of priorities for every different segment of the country.
You are absolutely right. I think we have to be very clear about one thing. Indeed, Africa is a continent. 54 or 55 countries, depending on what definition you follow. And yet, it is a continent which is bound together by a certain degree of unity, despite its all diversity. That is why, in spite of some skeptics saying why you are writing a book on India-Africa relations, can anybody would think of writing a book on Ghana-Asia relations? The answer is no, because Asia does not have that sense of unity and cohesiveness that Africa has. And if China can have an Africa policy, surely India also can have Africa policy. So there is a difference, and that is where we need to go into the depth of the whole question. My very brief comment to you, I know it's an intellectual discourse that we can do, I agree. And I've argued in the book that you have to have the approach towards Africa at least at 3 levels. One is at the continental level, which the government is doing by holding these periodic summits with the African Union. So that is where they discuss the entire Pan-African issues. Then the second level is the regional level. So we have relationship at the business level, political level, diplomatic level with the regional economic community. So there's a region of Africa, like Southern Africa, we deal with them and we handle issues there. And thirdly, at the bilateral level. And as I said, you really require a lifetime to produce a tome on India's relations with 54 countries. I was just able to pick 15 most important countries. And yet that was too short a list because some of the obvious countries could not figure on it. And it was, I confessed already that it was a subjective election. There are more countries than 15 on which India is investing heavily. So we should talk about this, but thank you for your interest. And I'm really very happy that the audience has been so alive.
Last question, PM.
My name is Narayan and I work for German Television. I'd like to know a little more about your personal view. At the outset, you said that you have around 38 years, 35 years of international experience in research. And you have first-hand ground experience in relationships. So you said sometimes such work have been pushed back by the academic and the intellectual circles. Can you just elaborate more about that? The question is like such works are being sort of pushed back by the so-called academic and intellectual circles.
I was not referring to any specific stance. What happens is, I'm being very human. When someone who is not of the diplomatic service comes and works with us, there is a natural tendency that he's not a real professional diplomat. Okay. Similarly, when a retired diplomat goes into the academic community, I'm sure people in the academic will say, "Does Mr. Bhatia have a PhD?" If you don't have a PhD, you can't write a book. Actually, you write a book in order to get a PhD. And I should share for you, when my Myanmar book was launched at a special function organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Yangon, the dean of the Yangon University got up, who was a panelist, there were 13 persons panelists. And he began by saying, "I must tell Ambassador Bhatia he made a big mistake." So, my heart sank. I said, "What have I done?" He said, "If Mr. Bhatia had come to me and registered his subject before, today, University of Yangon would be giving him a PhD." That's how the human part.
Well, that was a very interesting discussion. I just want to say thanks very much, Ambassador Bhatia and Secretary Ravi, for taking time and have this discussion with my colleagues at the Foreign Correspondents Corpus of Asia as a gesture of gratitude. President Clement I request Sebastian to come and hand over these things.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. Very interesting.
Thanks very much for coming. Buy copies of the book and available. And that's what I'm very happy to be part of that. Thank you.